Alright, ladies and gents, so we are starting the second half of this unit, and we split it up because it's just such a big unit that if we didn't, it would be way too big and long and nasty of a test. So far you have learned about introduction all the way up to plants. In this unit, this note packet, we are only doing animals. We do some pretty cool labs in here. We get to play with worms. We're going to play with some sponges at some point. Hopefully, we do some pretty cool stuff, and we'll see if we can get even some more animals in throughout. So let's jump in. So animals live almost everywhere on Earth. Okay, you yourself are an animal. Okay, so don't let yourself get confused there. So you are an animal, and animals live everywhere. We live at the bottom of the ocean, well, near the bottom of the ocean. We live where it's cold, where it's hot, where it's freezing. We live where it rains and where it doesn't rain. We live in the tops of the mountains and the bottom of the valleys. Okay, so we as animals, we're a very well-adapted species. We are very varied. Okay, excuse me. And all animals are multicellular heterotrophs. So remember what those two words mean. Multicellular means more than one cell. Heterotrophs means it eats food just like this lion does. There's a third characteristic, and you might want to write this down right next to these bullet points. We are all eukaryotic, and that should be pretty obvious because we are in domain eukarya. But I would suggest you write it down as well. So the main function of animals is to obtain food and oxygen, keep homeostasis. So remember that homeostasis means stable internal conditions. It spells S-I-C. So when you're keeping homeostasis, you are not sick. So Miss Sewell was out the last couple of days, so she was not in homeostasis. All animals move in some way, just like these creepy critters crawling across your screen. And all animals reproduce in some way. So most of the animals that you're thinking of in your head, I can predict, are probably animals that would reproduce sexually. So they do the kissing. But a lot of animals reproduce asexually or not sexually. So we're going to talk about those. We're going to start with the simple animals and move all the way up to the most complex animals. So an adaptation, we have talked about this before back in the evolution unit. An adaptation is a structure, function, or behavior that allows an animal to better survive in its environment. So go ahead and take a look at your hand for me. Okay, you have a thumb. Your thumb is a structure. It's part of your hand. The function of your thumb is to allow you to grab onto something. So imagine grabbing onto a branch on a tree. The behavior that you have learned is to climb the tree to get away from, let's say, an alligator. I don't know who lives near an alligator, but let's pretend. So most of the time, you're going to have all three of these categories filled. Your structure is your nose, the function is to smell, and your behavior is to smell danger. Maybe you smell a stinky lion, and you're like, oh, I gotta get out of here real quick. Okay. So a pouch for a kangaroo is a really good adaptation. So this provides a safe place for the baby Joey to eat, okay, because the mom's nipple and her milk is actually located down in the pouch, and it provides protection. Free babysitting, free daycare, you don't have to drop the kid off, you just, tuck them down in your pouch and they're good to go for the day. You can go to work. Okay. Classifying animals is about the same as before, so remember we classified organisms based on how they are related to each other. So just like that grocery store analogy we always used. They're going to keep all the produce together. They're going to keep all of the frozen pizzas together. They're going to keep all the Oreos together. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to keep the eight-legged animals together and call them arachnids. We're going to keep all the flying animals together and call them either insects or birds, depending on one other characteristic. So a lot of times we're going to keep things together based on their body structure, how they develop, and their DNA. Think way, way back to your genetics unit. That was forever ago at this point. Okay, we talked about DNA, how it's in your every single cell. You have so much of it all throughout your body. We can use DNA to find similar traits. That's how we're kind of supporting the theory of evolution, is we can take our DNA and we can take DNA from monkeys and we can say, hey, we share about 99.8% of DNA. most likely that guy over there with the fuzz, he's my cuz, okay? So here's a really cool picture. I'll let you look at it for just a second. So there are actually 35 branches, that should be coming off up here. So we're going to start with the very simple ones. We're going to start with sponges. Then we're going to learn about cnidaria. We're going to learn about flatworms. We're going to learn about mollusks, annelids, roundworms, arthropods, echinoderms, and chordates. So almost everything on this list we are going to be learning about, and even just a little bit more than that. So I like this half of the unit. I like it all, but the second half's a little bit more fun. So animals can either be vertebrates or invertebrates. A vertebrate has a backbone. So this is your body right here. This is your butt. These are your shoulder blades. Here's your head. You have this bone going down the middle of your back. It's actually a bunch of bones. That is called your vertebrae. So that makes sense why we are vertebrates. It's your spine. An invertebrate is something without a backbone. So think of an animal that you can pick up and squirm him all around. A really good example is a worm. There's no bones in a worm. You can pick him up, tie him in a knot, throw him in a lake, and catch a fish with him. You're not going to break his back. Okay, but if you tried to do that with a snake, you would snap him straight in half. Okay, no good. So animals, here's that kind of point just reiterated. Animals are kind of organized based on their body structure or body plan. A body plan is the organization of cells and tissues, tissues into organs, and organs into organ systems. This should sound familiar because we talked about this back in your cell unit way back. Cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make organ systems, and eventually, like in this picture, we would make the organism. So in this picture, what you're seeing is a muscle cell, and then your muscle tissue, and then you actually have a lot of muscle in your heart, and then your heart is part of your cardiovascular system, which gives all of your body blood and oxygen, and then all of those systems together form you as a human being. So I think symmetry is super duper easy, so let's see how you can handle it. So many organisms have a balanced display of body parts, otherwise known as symmetry. Look at these figures here. All of these are symmetrical. They can be folded along this imaginary line, and it will be the same on both sides. So right now what I want you to do is take your hands, put your pinkies together, put your palms together, and put your thumbs together. When you open up your hands, but keep your pinkies touching, your hands are symmetrical because you have 4 fingers and a thumb on your left hand, and then you have 4 fingers and a thumb on your right hand. Same thing with your face. If you drew a line straight down the middle of your face, each half has an eye, each half has a nose hole, has half a mouth and an ear, and some other stuff. Okay, so your body is symmetrical. But there's 3 types of symmetry that we need to know. The first one is going to be called radial symmetry. Radial symmetry is when an imaginary lines, see I underlined the S, lines can be drawn through a central point. Think of this just like a pizza. So when we cut a pizza, we can cut it any way we want and we can still get the same thing, a slice of pizza. Okay, and I know some of you are thinking, Miss Riddle, look, this slice has 2 pepperonis and this one only has 1.5. All right. So maybe it's not perfect. But this jellyfish, and this pizza can be cut a bunch of different ways because it's about the same on every side. So each slice of this jellyfish, which I don't suggest you eat, is going to be the same. It has these little tentacles. It has this little heart-shaped doodad thing. Who knows? Okay, same thing down here. You get some crust, you get some cheese, you get some sauce, and whatever these red things are. Red peppers? Who knows? So animals with radial symmetry, they often live in water. Actually, they only live in water. They don't have a front or back, and what that means is they don't have a head or a butt. So if they don't have a head, they can't have a brain. So my cat Nuka, he has a head and he has a butt. So he does not have radial symmetry. But think of like a starfish or this sea anemone right here. Okay, the starfish and the sea anemone, they don't have a head and they don't have a butt. They are both animals. This is actually an adaptation, is to not have a head or butt. It allows them to sense information from every single angle around them. So it is physically impossible to sneak up on a starfish. You can't do it. because it can sense you. It knows you're there. Even if you're sneaking up from the left, the right, the back, the front, the side at 22 degrees, it doesn't matter. It can feel your sensation. Whereas for us, I can sneak up behind some of you guys and scare you really, really good because you have no way of seeing me behind you. These starfish can. They can sense you. So here's where we come in. We have what's called bilateral symmetry. Bi should look familiar, that prefix, because bi means two. So we're drawing one line to divide something into two parts. So look at this dog picture down here. We can draw one line straight through the dog's face and body to end up with the left and the right side of the dog. Same thing with the crayfish and the butterfly. We can draw one line down through in order to get two halves of the organism. So that's you. If we drew a line from your head all the way down to in between your legs, you would be sliced perfectly in half because you are bilaterally symmetrical. Excuse me. So animals with bilateral symmetry are often large and complex. So you're often bigger than, let's say, like a sea star or a starfish. Okay, those things typically are pretty small. You're more complex because you have eyes, you have ears, you have mouth, you have head, shoulders, knees, and toes. You know the rest of the song. Okay, you have all sorts of complexities. We have complex organ systems. You have 11 of them in your body. You have your nervous system, your respiratory, your integumentary system. You're very streamlined. What this means is you can move quick and you can move swiftly. Okay, a lot of you are in sports because you have streamlined bodies. You're not big and clunky. You don't have like really like weirdly long legs or a really weirdly long neck. Okay, nothing weird like that. You don't have 200 tentacles sticking off of your legs like a jellyfish. Okay, and all of these guys, most of them have a head and a brain with eyeballs. Okay, so look at this little tiger here and my little kitty cat sleeping right here on my laptop. So my kitty cat and this tiger have a head. It has eyes. You can cut it perfectly in half because the bilateral symmetry means two. So you're breaking it down into two parts. We're going to classify organisms based on their symmetry. So this is just kind of a recap slide. Animals with radial and bilateral are often complex with tissues and organ systems. So we talked about radial has a bunch of lines. Bilateral has one line. And there's one more type, it's called asymmetry, and I'm going to give you a pop quiz right now. What does the prefix A mean? If you guessed no, you're absolutely right. No symmetry. Okay, so these organisms have no symmetry in their body. So the only example that we're going to really talk about in our class is going to be sponges. Okay, sponges, they actually don't have any they don't have any tissues, excuse me. They are only made of cells. So I think that's pretty cool. This sponge, and you can look at one, I have one up on my front desk, is 100% just a bunch of cells that like living together. They don't have tissues. They don't have cardio tissue like a heart. They don't have respiratory tissue so they can breathe. They don't have skin. It's just a bunch of cells that like living together. So we're going to watch a pretty cool video about sponges, I think Monday. So sponges are actually pretty cool. I'm going to link this video on your Google Classroom so you can watch it. It's pretty good. I think it's about 3 minutes long. Maybe 4. So go back to Google Classroom or look up on the front board to figure out what you need to do next. Make sure your notes are all finished for the day before you move on. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and Miss Sewell or I will be around. Good luck.